life-giving relationships that I'm in at the minute. And like it was like I was wanting to get to a new dimension, discover something, a different avenue, a new season, something new that the Lord is birthing. And I find that the deep listening is just a reminder that it's not about us.
Right.
Stopping a little bit and assessing your approach and asking the important questions to yourself, and why you're doing what you're doing and what the purpose is and all that. So asking the questions, and then I think having a specific framework so that there's a goal.
Good.
You have all the substance, but sometimes it's difficult to frame it completely, to know, okay, well, where am I going with this?
Yes.
So I'm still figuring out exactly where it goes, but I find that a lot of the conversations that I've had was very, very challenging, life-giving, in the sense of, it's not the status quo of let's just keep going. And hoping that we're going to hit the mark. It helps with bringing stuff into perspective. So it's been beneficial for me, definitely, in that sense. I think getting people that I'm journeying with already to understand themselves better, and finding perspective. So in a nutshell, those are my
really helpful. I had the same experience. Like when I began to practice this, as leaders, we have conversations with people anyway, all the time. But this brings them to a different fruitfulness, or a different point, different clarity. And I thought, my conversations are more fruitful than they used to be.
Or they're less. There's a deeper level you're getting into.
Yes,
but also sorry to.
No, that's good. You froze up there on me. All right, he'll come back, I hope.
Well, yeah.
I don't think it's mine. I think I've got pretty good. You may have to drop out, come back in. Anyway, Beth, just share with me what is different. You're already a leader, so what's new now?
I think what has stuck with me is a few different things. One of them being how I love the thing that we talked about in terms of the progression with somebody. So going from, and I haven't got it nailed, but the idea of the main thing that I've been thinking of is before you can talk about like boundaries and maybe even like passions, all that kind of like forward looking stuff, it's like almost drilling down to design. And I think that kind of paradigm makes sense to me, is that once someone knows who they are in the Lord and then knows who they are in their own things and strengths, it almost adds the necessary like power behind about boundaries. And so that's been really helpful as a tool almost to think, okay, so I know there's some boundary work to be done, but before we go there, it's much, we have to do this first.
Yes.
So that's been a key thing. And then also I love the whole thing of visually thinking, okay, so this person's very different than me. How are we going to effectively work together? But helping that by visually compiling like who they are. So, and that being a tool to help you to really support someone, because if someone's so different than myself, it's extra challenging, and so that I can see it's a helpful tool for that.
So good. You're both saying a different version of the same thing, that this takes development. It makes it less random, more pointed, more deep, more tailored, I guess I would say, to them. And so long as you can keep that coaching mindset and the spotlight on the person, and then you develop that worksheet of who they are, thriving isn't a mystery anymore. It's being you. It's whatever that is. But The work is you and them, but more them than you, beginning to understand who they are and how they're made. So that's what today's class is all about. So that's a great segue into today. But I've really enjoyed our class. I know it's been small, and I like small actually, but I really see all three of you taking the material and applying it. So it's been really encouraging, because this thing is picking up steam. More and more people are catching it, and it's helpful to just hear this feedback. So love it. Let me pray, and you'll like today, because today's right and smack dab in the center of what we're just talking about. And I think it'll be helpful. So Holy Spirit, we welcome you to bring life, bring energy, bring focus. These are two great leaders. And I just ask that you deposit the tools, Yapi, as he's watching it later, just drop in the tools needed, the frameworks needed to not help people exist and survive, but help them move to excellence and thrive beyond just the mundane and the average, because that's what you created us for. So thank you, Father. In your name, amen.
Amen.
All right, so we're going to do the master class. Yeah. Boom. Believe it or not, we are in session 8. Can you believe that? We're almost done. 4 more. Has it gone fast? It's gone fast for me, but I don't know about you. So we're going to talk about fruit. Well, how does a person bear what I call ridiculous fruit? I had a ridiculous fruit story. Like, I bought this house about 17 years ago, and there were 4 big, kind of gnarly old grapevines in the back. And I thought, I've got a vineyard, and I looked online, I started cutting and doing the things that the gardener said online. It said to prune them real good. And so I did that around October. I bought in October. So around, as it started to get cold, you're supposed to prune them so they'll come back in the spring. Well, man, they had been dormant. And I mean, like buckets of grapes came off of these 4 vines. It was literally ridiculous amounts of fruit. How do you get to that as a leader? I think Mining for Gold has some answers to that. I think it does. So, and it has to do with your connection with Jesus, your identity, your design, and you are just living out of the rest of that, and the wind and the momentum of that is happening. So, and then the second thing I want to say is you need to, guys, and people need to own their design. What do you think I mean by that? They need to own it. How does that help a leader? What do you think, guys? They need to own it.
Yeah, I think it means a lot about not trying to be anybody else, not trying to have anyone else's gifts, not coveting other people's spiritual gifts, and leaning into who the Lord's made.
Good word. Leaning in. No, the spotlight's not trying to look out there at someone. It's looking at the Father and then looking in and saying, for good, actually, but for whatever it comes, this is what the Lord made me. And relaxing into it and owning it, so that you start working. Your energies are not on trying to be someone you're not, because you only have a fixed amount of energy. Your energy is going into being the best version of you. Does that make sense? Okay. Mm-hmm. So owning it. All right. So similar slides, but I've got a real particular focus on this class 8 that I do in the master class. So we're getting to this sweet spot. We've talked about design. We're now in the second one on sweet spot, and it's really, really, it's explosive. That's the word I want to say. It can be like that huge crop of fruit, and I find a lot of people just skim the surface of design. They just skim the surface of how I'm made. And today's going to be a deep dive into how people are designed. Deep dive today. So I want to say, the degree to which you'll really mine for this is the gold you'll get out. the degree that you don't, you will not. Does that make sense? If you just kind of like, so I do this or that, you'll get a mediocre fruit. When you know your strengths, when you can come into a leadership situation, guys, or help that leader go, oh, this is my sweet spot. They can say yes or no and step in. Also, when they don't know it, they can say, no, that's not a place for me necessarily. I need to, if the Lord's telling me to do it, I need to do it. But if this is just someone asking me, I can say no and stay in that superior place of fruit. This is also how you sail in ministry. Right about the time I got this incredible coaching from my mentor, Bob Logan, I went to a Holy Spirit conference, and the whole theme was, are you sailing or are you rowing? Is everything emanating out of your head and what your will? Or are you catching some divine strategy, momentum, kingdom power? And they just kind of hit at the same time. I started to rely more on the Spirit. I started to come into my sweet spot, and it was like just an explosion of momentum and speed and just almost a multiplication type of dynamic happened when all that came together. I was trusting in the Lord, letting Him do the work through me, but I started to know who I was. A couple points before I get into the real details on design today. You know, everyone, you and I, all of us go through the seasons. There's hard, difficult cross seasons of winter. Just feels cold. It's hard. It doesn't feel warm and pleasant, but it's a necessary God part of life. That's the sweet spot doesn't change there. If you're in spring and everything's good again, it doesn't mean you move out of this concept of a sweet spot. If you're in summer where life's real easy and flowing and kind of, there doesn't seem to be a lot of struggle there, or fall or autumn when things kind of start changing, you know, some renewals needed. What I want to say is, this is not related to the season you're in. You're you in every season. They're them. So when sweet spot is discovered, it solves so many problems. They don't have to. In other words, regardless of the external circumstances, am I making sense? They keep at this, and it helps them actually endure some tougher seasons because they keep their head down. They stay looking on the Jesus and the cross, and they emerge even more pruned and fruitful. So I want to spend a little time on this. So just focus on this screen for a second, and we're going to really dig into this. So a leader, every time I coach a leader, I print out one of these. I have one. Have I given that to you yet? Did I give you a copy of that? I'll do that if you want me to. It's like I did do that, didn't I? It's a spreadsheet.
Yes, a template.
Template. Okay, so I will do this with leaders, and it's always in front of me when I'm coaching, because as we coach, we start to say, well, what's your next decision? Where are you going to focus energy? Where are you struggling? Where do you need to make some adjustments? Regardless of the topic we're going to cover, this design stuff remains something I keep at the forefront of my mind and heart. I have a file with Mining for Gold notebook has all my clients in it, and this will be in there. And I'll turn to that leader's time when it's time to come to pray for our next session, and I'll remind myself, this is not about Tom. This is about them. This is about their design. This is about how they perceive things. And I try to live in, a loving otherness. I try to focus on them. So let's dig into this design for just a second, and then we'll answer the questions at the bottom. First thing would be a Myers-Briggs. So just listen. If you don't know these terms, I'm just going to throw this out. So Myers-Briggs talks about introversion and extroversion. Extroversion, people get energy with people. Introversion get energy from being alone in a way they re-energize alone without a lot of external people time. The second letter is N or S, which is whether they make decisions in an intuitive level basis or they make decisions on a data-driven basis. The S is a sense of data driven. They're not really interested in people or how it feels or the intuition of it. They're like, what are the facts? They make decisions based on facts. An intuition person makes their decisions based on values, how they sense it, how it feels to them. That's just different wiring. When these are in place, people may be on the fence between one like N or S, but generally they're wired one way and it doesn't change over time, very rarely. The third one is the T or the F. Some people base it based on feelings. Some people base their decisions on thinking, T or F. Those are pretty fixed. I think I've pointed you to the 16 personality types. I read over a person's Myers-Briggs through my coaching with them about 2 or 3 times, just to remind myself, they're going to struggle with these same weaknesses. They're going to have some of the same tendencies. Doesn't pigeonhole them. It just says, this is how they think. And the last one is J or P. P people tend to enjoy a spontaneous lifestyle, I am a P actually. It's like, what's the next thing? Where are we going to be? I like to just go where the wind sometimes blows. I'm never going to be different than that. I like structure, but when you really cut me, I kind of enjoy let's just chill and see where it goes. Doesn't mean I'm not organized. Doesn't mean I don't have goals, but I enjoy the spontaneity of things. A J is much more different. Needs like fixed structure, things to be really disciplined and orderly. Knows where the plan is coming up. Doesn't like to be surprised as much. So as you can see in the Myers-Briggs, that has a lot to do with the way they'll lead. And so when I'm working with a leader, this guy is called the commander. When I am looking at their design, I think, okay, this is the way they're going to approach leadership with extroversion, intuition, thinking, and structure. Like I'm opening up my brain to you. I don't know if this is helping, but like I think about when they begin to move towards action steps, when they begin to evaluate where they are, I'm looking at this as a part of their design. So that's the first one. The second one is DISC. I mean, if this is helpful, let me know. If not, we don't have to take the time, but I'm going deep here. The DISC has to do with how you see leading and what are your most natural, consistent tendencies when you do your work and lead. This one, particularly their first one, was strong D, that's the commander, the ruler, redemptive gift. They don't ask a lot of questions. What does everybody want to do? They don't necessarily, they're very decisive leaders. They're directive, D. And then their second one is influencing, which is speaking, inspiring, and but they're strong D with a secondary I. Meaning the other two, S and C, have to do with supporting or sustaining type of leadership, which are people that are just real regimented and orderly in their work. The S, and then the C are this consistent. They like to be background people. They do not prefer being up front. The D and the I's do. The S's and the C's are less so. So I know that about this person. If you put them in a role where they're consistently unable to influence, they will be miserable. So if they're in a role that doesn't allow them that, I'm like, can we just talk about your DISC for a second? I don't know if this role allows you to play to your strengths. And they're like, I know that, but what do I do? Like, how do you know? And we talk about that. Some people will be mismatched with their DISC and they're miserable, but they don't understand why. And I'm like, well, you're not wired that way. Am I making sense? I'm like, it's really simple to mining for gold, but they're in a job and they need to keep making that income or whatever. And now we begin to explore, well, what would it look like even in your current job to switch the way you're adjusted? Anyway, next, that's DISC. That's why I use DISC. This one, I really want to talk about for a second. This is the single greatest determiner of sweet spot. I'll tell you why. The Gallup Strength Finder measures what you do naturally without any amount of significant will or effort. You just naturally do those 5 things. So this person naturally maximizes each situation they're in, every business deal, every contract they're in, every project they take on. They don't think in terms of just getting by. Their brain goes to maximizer. And that's John Wright, the head of the vineyards in the UK, one of his top ones is maximizer. So when you have these, you don't strive in these. That's a key indicator of sweet spot because it's passion, wiring. This is the fruit portion of the 3 circles is right here. And it's hands down the best tool on the planet for sweet spot. So I don't think I've gone into this level with you guys. And I think I'm just trying to tell you that this is what I do in mining for gold at a professional level. Is this helpful, guys? I mean, just wave at me if this is good because I don't know if I'm giving you stuff that you don't want to hear, but when a person has these, I try to say, go read all 5 of these, pray over them in depth, and really analyze and ask the Father, why did you make me maximizer? Why do I have command? Why am I strategic? What is my thing of focus? A person with focus can tune everything out and stay really disciplined on what's in front of them almost supernaturally. And they're an arranger, meaning they are constantly looking at life like puzzle pieces, like what will maximize this and how do I get them there and what's strategic? And so these 5 things are effortless. So this is what mine are: woo, communication, futuristic, positivity, and activator. Those are my 5. So when my coach said to me, Tom, those are you, what percentage of your time are you giving to that in your professional life? And it was probably about 40%, 50%. He said, what would happen if you just increase that number over time? I'm like, man. And so I did a time audit on my time. I started to switch over here this is why I've made the decisions I've made. This type of thing, this class and teaching and helping you, it's where I come alive. I don't feel like I'm even working. I will be energized after this little class we're doing. I love this. It's what I am, because what I do. But the sweet spot and strengths finders require discipline and knowledge and understanding that you begin to reallocate time more here. I don't know if stop me if you have any questions, but that is why that's hands down best one on sweet spot. So the redemptive gifts are a specialty of mine, but from Romans 12. And when a person is a ruler, they're like Nehemiah or Solomon in the Bible, or Noah. They're usually given projects to do, big projects, things that take a lot of leadership to spend, rebuild the wall, build the temple, build an ark. But they're wired by God as builders. That's how they're made. So if you treat this person like a different redemptive gift, like an exhorter or a teacher or a servant, you're not cooperating with how the Father made them or the things that he's created them and wired them to do. Secondary, the giver, Abraham, this was a giver, and Job, and third, a teacher. So what I use there is I try to think of a biblical example about that, of who that person is. And I have a whole, teaching on this and notes and stuff, but that really tells me their kingdom purpose. And I find that critical. When I know your kingdom purpose, you're more of an Esther than you are a Martha or whatever you want to consider. Then it sort of brings a biblical grounding, a kingdom grounding to all of this. All right, before we get into let me get into the last one of all. And I'm not the best at this one, but many people find this super helpful. And I refer to it, and it's the Enneagram. The book Ian Morgan Crone called The Road Back to You is a great book by IVP, but it talks about 9 wirings and how they naturally are. And it's similar to strength finders, a natural way they live and tendencies, but this also has a key component where it has what they do when they're stressed and not at their best, and what they do when they're peaceful and at their best. That's a key component of that. This person and the Enneagram 1 is called the perfectionist. This is a real person, by the way, that you don't know their name, but very much shows up here because they want to maximize. Guess what they do at their worst? They try to make things perfect, right? Isn't it there's a kingdom thing to maximize, to, rebuild the wall. Whereas an Enneagram 1 can get really depressed when it's not to the standard that they see in their mind, or they don't think it's good enough. They're constantly struggling. Is it good enough? Is it good enough? Is it excellence? All of that. All right. These are tools. There are a bunch of others. Before I get into the questions, any comments on what I've just done? What did you hear in that was at all helpful? Anybody?
It's funny because you can almost imagine the person. Like, I don't know who this is, but you can almost imagine them, and then it's funny. Then when you start putting them together, I'm just thinking, because especially with the Enneagram, thinking that they're perfectionists, but also a ruler, and they've got command, and you start to think, gosh, I imagine they're like quite an in-your-face leader and need to make sure they consider people and like take people with them and
correct
that stuff. And so it's funny to know that just from seeing this.
And then if you were to with a person and you grasp them to this degree, wouldn't yeses and nos start to make sense? Wouldn't choices, when you think of sweet spot and thriving, this would matter, wouldn't it? Be like, it would start to elevate and bring to the surface their tensions. When you ask them, what's the greatest thing in your life or leadership that you're challenged by? They could say what it is, and I could point to you on here one of the reasons why. Does that make sense? Does that sound too simplistic? But I could point to you one reason why out of this, because there's something that God is trying to move into. Carl, any thoughts before I move on?
I think it's interesting just to hear you talk through it. I've gone through a few now with some people around me as well. It's very interesting, Tom, just to see their eyes light up when they're like, oh, right. I understand why it's like this, or right. I didn't know this about myself, or
right.
It's interesting you said with the Myers-Briggs, you find that people don't change in that.
They don't.
I find it interesting with the redemptive gift how we'll taste strong in some stuff, but I mean Jesus was all of them, so there's growth in that as well.
That's right.
Would you say the Enneagram is similar to the Myers-Briggs, where you sort of stay where you are?
That's a great question. That's a really good question. Yeah, mostly you would stay where you are. There are some that mirror each other, like a 2 and a 9 kind of mirror each other, but they look different. Like sometimes a servant and a mercy will sort of look different, but your eyes aren't attuned. And a 3 and a 7 sometimes will look a little similar of an Enneagram. Yes and no. I find when you really nail it, you're that, and you don't change. Yeah. But I do believe what I love about the redemptive gifts overall is that you're maturing into the 7 wisdom principles of Scripture, and the 7 parts of God's nature, and those principles that go with each one of design, responsibility, authority. Have I covered all that with y'all? Maybe not, but that's the redemptive gift principles: stewardship, freedom, and fulfillment.
Yes.
So those principles, even though you're growing into them, your root level Myers-Briggs, DISC, or StrengthsFinders really will change a ton. But you're maturing, and your decision making is more integrated. It's more wise. It's more rooted in truth than our perception. All of our perception is flawed, right? 1 Corinthians 13, I see in part, I prophesy in part. the more I mature, I'm considering all aspects of things, and I make wiser decisions. So, again, another example. Let's say this person's 18, which a lot of 18-year-olds don't, they haven't done all this stuff yet. But let's say they're 22 versus 62. Think about that for a second. What would you see in the 22-year-old here you wouldn't see in a 62-year-old?
Yeah.
Wisdom, right? Experience, failures, mistakes, rebounding.
Maturity,
Maturity. But the wiring would be just about the same, maybe some changes in strength finders. So you follow me? It's like exactly what you're saying. There's a maturity to all of this, and then there's some aspects that don't change. So this person's sweet spot, give me some examples of what would be a sweet spot for them. Just throw some words out. Describe a role, a position, or and a way of leading that they would thrive at.
Maybe if someone's brought in to solve a problem.
Yep. Good.
Maybe maybe even to do with structure of an organization, or they're brought in as a consultant or someone that's got that experience.
A company that lacks structure, maybe even this could be maybe an executive pastor in a ministry role, could be a person who runs major construction projects, and their business is really fuzzy and flappy and it's got all kinds of things out in the breeze. This person would come in and bring, boom, they would bring that order, that structure, and their leadership wouldn't be wishy-washy. It would be like, you're going to get what you hire, but you hire this person, they're not going to come in on Monday morning and go, what do you guys feel like we want to do? That's just not going to do that. They're going to say, here's the plan. They might say, what do you guys think? But in their minds, they already think they know it. Follow me? So that, a turnaround situation, a place that needs structure. What else would this person thrive?
My first thought would be say like a mayor or someone,
a governor,
like a governor, president, someone like that. But I see the cold almost as well. So in accounting terms, you've got say like when a company goes under administration, like you said, someone to come in and say, well, this is the new regime. This is what we're going to follow now. Here's the structure.
Yeah.
This is how we're going to get out of the mess. Get
us out of the mess. Get us out of the mess. Get us on firm footing would be another one. You don't bring this person in when you want everybody to feel good necessarily.
You're not going to send this person into social work.
You're not going to send them into social work. No. They even may struggle in the area of a pastor because they don't necessarily just care a lot about their things, aren't a lot about warmth and empathy. But this was a pastor, but it was of a very large church. Can you see that? Because they build big things and they want to do that, and they weren't necessarily known. Their E and their N made them accessible. Like when they would teach and preach, people they could sense their energy and that part. But Monday morning it was doom, was just like, you just hear the beep, 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 and the construction equipment moving. Not, how are you today, Beth? Something like that. But this person could build. So you follow me? Let's do another one. Where should this person spend 80% of their time? Give me some words.
I always feel like solving problems.
Problem solving, good.
They can't be in a role that's like too easy or is
good point.
Like it's not going anywhere.
Correct. Yeah. Status quo would kill them. Just yeah.
I imagine as well if which we all have to do if you're working up in your career, but being in a role where you don't actually have much authority. or much like power to make any of these huge changes.
Right.
I imagine it would be really challenging, and
Right.
so it's seeking a place where they can have influence.
If they began to be not challenged, could this person cause problems?
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, if they're not continually given alligators to wrestle and empires to build, that could go south, you know, because if they feel a bit, if you follow me, like closed in or something, you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, and as well as who, like if they're not accountable, you can see how it could go. Nobody tells me, you know,
Correct.
I know what it's about.
Correct.
If you, I'm thinking if this guy is a pastor, he needs a strong prophet and someone
Correct.
with a pastoral gifting next to him.
Correct.
Because someone needs to give the vision and then he'll execute
Good.
the vision.
Good. He needs that, but he doesn't need to be micromanaged, right? He needs strength, but not micromanaged. Now you're getting it, guys. You're like, so in this person, one of the things we did work on was he was struggling with how he was perceived. He couldn't understand why the world didn't just love him. Well, I said, well, they do love you, but they love aspects about you, but you're just not a warm and fuzzy guy. And he's like, well, I kind of want to be. Well, I said, well, good luck with that, because you're not. And he was like, well, I don't really feel like one, but it seems like to be a pastor, you should be. And I'm like, well, should, heck with should. Let's look at you. You're a builder. And then he began to adjust into that. And then it was actually what you said. It was like, you need strong team members who won't be intimidated by you, right? And challenge you. And guess what?
Yeah.
There was a guy that all he needed to do, it was two guys actually, that he just would sit down with them and say, would you guys meet with me monthly or quarterly, where I could bounce off all this energy, and you guys love me, but you're also not afraid to call me on it. You know, I don't tell you his name, but you know, BS on that. Come on. And they wouldn't be intimidated. And he'd be like, thank you. You know, these type of people prefer you to just get up in their face. You understand what I'm saying? And they would, but they love him. And they say, you know, you're full of it. I don't know, that's an American term. I don't know what you say over there, but we say you're full of it. But he would go, thanks. What do you guys think? I said, well, you got a good thing there, but you need to da-da-da-da-da-da. And just like you said, Carl, this guy's started doing even better. I think you're getting it. I'm hearing it. So where would this person feel the most alive? Energy, joy, life.
When they're solving a problem, I keep thinking about that. It's like either rescuing a situation or there's a particular vision, like there's a target they've got to hit.
Yeah.
All out for that target.
Measured results. Boom. Maximizer. You know, we're at 57%. Whoa, I feel great. You know, other people would go, who gives a flip about 57%? This guy does. Right? Just like you said, you know, our goal's 80. We were at 30 and we're at 57. This guy would get excited. He'd feel alive. He did. Isn't that weird? I mean, you might not. It's not about you and I. It's about him. They feel alive in structured challenges where goals are being met and progress is measured. What else?
Yeah, I think this guy seems like almost a little bit apostolic as well.
Correct.
You should be more in that role, you should be more that, but if it lacks the relational element, then people would be offended or they'd feel bossed around. Maybe, hey, don't you think how we can utilize it by putting you in that position? This is your gift set. Let me help you in that.
Again, I even went beyond that. I did better than that with him. And I said, even though you know what the answer is, what if you led by questions and you let them come to their conclusions instead of your directive always telling them what was right? It doesn't matter if you're right. It matters if we feel a part of the process. He goes, why go through all that? I said, trust me, why don't you just try it? He did. He goes, Tom, it's amazing. I already thought it, but I went, hey, John, what do you think about da-da-da? He came to the same conclusion I did. I'm like, dude, this works. And he was like, oh, wow. So I asked questions and people are, it didn't change this, Carl, that his leadership started to mature and do what you said.
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting.
I can see it.
Yeah. And so
people want to feel a part. They want to feel a part of the process. They'll have buy-in then. Yeah.
but he still was D. He still was commander. But he couldn't always do it. There were times when he would just go, listen, we're not going to all, I want you to do it. There was times of that.
Yeah.
He began to adjust his leadership style to a more of a mining for gold way that drew out the gold in the people around them, rather than just saying, you're gonna, where would this person feel least alive?
In meetings that don't go anywhere.
Good point.
Yeah.
What else?
Whether I have to take instruction from someone that has got a weak vision, maybe.
Good point. Good point. They would struggle to not know where this is going. Yeah, they would. That's very true. Where things are fuzzy. No,
I can put it. I can almost tell you the name of this person. I know someone exactly like this.
Come on, man. Are you serious? That's cool. That's awesome. I know
someone very close to me. I can see this. They'll be like I'll tell you, the main struggle is weak leadership around them and excellence. Things are not run in excellence.
Yeah.
They'll say things like, I can't honor something that's not honorable.
Wow.
Or I can't follow something that's weak. It seems weak.
Look at that. See, there's a living example. And so, has this been helpful? This tends to be helpful for students when I do. It's like, I don't just think of design in a fuzzy way. I have a very clear picture in my head that, and I've done this with each of you. I have a little section where I looked at your design stuff, and that's pretty much you. But people don't take the time to know this about themselves well, and the ones that do, they reap the greatest fruit. So I would just encourage you, whether you ever become a professional coach or not, at least if you have these tools in your brain and you're just doing leadership in a mining for gold way, you're sensitive to design. Design matters. So anyway, let's keep going. So what if we were to inspect the fruit for someone? I ask questions like this: what do you find is really easy for you? What do you have a lot of joy doing? There's a great quote, I can't remember the name of it, I found it early on in my career, that nothing is sustainable without joy. You ever heard that before? It's a great quote. Mm-hmm. Nothing is sustainable without joy. Why? If I don't enjoy this, it's all will-based. I will get up and do this thing, and because I got to do this thing. No human is wired that way long term. They got to get up and go, I love this stuff, whatever it is. And there's energy and there's joy because they're going to do it again and again and again. And that's where excellence comes from, doing things over and over that you have joy with. It's the intersection of what comes naturally, helps others, and they enjoy it, and it's easy. What's naturally easy, they enjoy it, and it helps others. Therefore, God gets glory. And there's 1,000 ways. Some people, if they're very, very not people-oriented, data-driven, want to work with spreadsheets and numbers, and I've coached people like this. They like their family, but they don't really care to get up and do with people. They're giving God glory when they're analyzing large reams of data and coming up with trends and helping companies or organizations or churches run better because of the facts. That's a sweet spot, and you honor that and you help them with that. What can you keep doing over and over, and you could do it again the next day and the next day? Key sweet spot indicator. Another one that kind of flips the script is if you go to friends and go, hey, when you, this kind of feels a little narcissistic, but it's not, I don't mean to be like, what about me do you feel is helpful in situations or, on teams or whatever? People will tell you, and they will affirm you, those that, you know, are going to be kind and gracious, and it'll help you. You're like, really, do I do that? You know, like you think it's so easy, and they're like, yeah, that thing you do. And you're like, that thing? You're like, yeah, that thing. It's really helpful. This is how you find fruit. Does that help at all? I'm just giving you kind of the whole picture today. Yeah, got about 40 minutes left. So I'm going to get into a pretty thick, I'm going to stop for a second. Has this been helpful so far?
Yes.
I'm getting into some really thick stuff now. Okay, so just buckle your seatbelt, because this is to me high level stuff that it'll just give you a deeper even look of what I've already done. So I call it strength-based living or strength-based leadership. If you pivot your leadership to your strength, you will go further. In my opinion, you'll earn more, because it's the difference between living from your strengths or having improved weaknesses. Which would you rather have? A better weakness or a highly performing strength? There's no comparison between the two. But a lot of people work their whole lives trying to be less this of their weakness. That, I mean, yes, you should mitigate weakness. If sometimes you shoot off at the mouth and blow people's brains, you should shut up sometimes and think before it. But don't stop being that commander because sometimes you blow people's brains up. Don't blow people's brains up, but be you. You follow me? Like, be strong. Don't try to make a lion a lamb, but you've got to keep growing. So strength-based living comes out of what is that sweet spot, that strength finders, naturalness. And I'm going to dig into that for a minute because I found this really helpful. This is like a gold mine of a slide to me. So if you want to take a picture of it or whatever, do it. A person's strength, they will have rapid learning. Will not be hard for them. They will quickly pick up that thing of what they're doing. They'll be like, yeah, oh yeah, sure. When they're in their sweet spot, when they're in a strength, easily learned, pick it up fast. The rest of the people in the room won't be, but when they're in their strength, rapid learning. Second, moments of genius. They're like, they do and think of things in that area that are just crazy cool, creative, innovative, helpful. You're like, it's like, let's you go into an area and you're in a meeting with someone and they just come up with this like drop of genius. Take a note. What were we just talking about? Where did that come from? And think, wow, Jane, that was amazing. There's gold there in Jane. Make a note of it. Are you following me? Like moments of genius. When you see someone come up with something, you like go, cool. Let's figure more for that. Near perfect performance. Now, I'm not talking about perfectionism. I'm saying they sustain a high level of functioning in that area, which borders on perfection over and over and over again. No people can do that except in their strengths. You follow me? No one can do that. But when you're in a strength, every time you show up, you are doing amazing work, which leads to, better reviews, promotions, opportunities, more business, whatever it is. You're so good at it, you just keep striving for a higher level of excellence. And in your area of strength, you can actually keep getting closer to this incredible level of excellence. Passion or an intense sense of satisfaction, like when you're done doing it, you just like everything in the world feels right. I know it's kind of a fuzzy way to look at it, but anyway, it's like life's just right and good. And I can tell you from my wiring, I mean, I wrote this book, but right now doing this, I love it. I love it. I would do it again and I'd do it again the next day. And I would get up at 5 a.m. to do it and I'll do it again tomorrow. I really enjoy working with you and I enjoy the sense of this type of interaction, but you helping others, when you tell the stories that you guys have of someone being helped, there's this tremendous sense of deep satisfaction that I'm doing what I was meant to do. It's about you and not me. That's part of sweet spot. And then last one, you don't even think about. Time is like, you could do it and you do it again and you could do it and you're into the wee hours of the morning. You're like, wow, that was like nothing, because you're in a strength. I don't know. People told me this is a huge slide. Is that helpful for y'all? That's for me. So, okay. Let's get the opposite now. Everybody's experienced this. Signs of a weakness. You will never become excellent by focusing on your weakness. You'll become excellent by focusing on your strength. Consistent, average, or less than average performance. This feels like a migraine to me, but anyway. Average or less than average, and do it again the next week, and do it again next. That would drive me bananas. But this, you live in weakness and less than good performance. It takes you forever to learn something. Don't get away from that. You might need to be persistent to learn a high level subject, but I'm talking about, it just doesn't come to you. There's no joy in it. You hate it. That's a weakness. Can you learn areas and get better? Yes, you could. And sometimes you need to do that professionally, but it doesn't need to be your central focus generally. You have to think through the steps so much. Nothing ever comes naturally in it, and you have to kind of create cheat sheets, and those are good, and there'll be a 20% of your career you need to do that, but that shouldn't be your area of focus. And you don't have any confidence. So, that's kind of simplistic, but just see that if a person's really working hard at this, they're gonna never feel the momentum of sweet spot. All right, I'm gonna teach for about 10 more minutes, and then we're gonna be done. So in strengths, think superpower. Everybody, I don't know what it's like in your country, but over here it's Marvel, DC. Do you guys have all that, or is that just America? Captain Marvel and what are all those people, Captain America and Iron Man. I don't know if everybody in the world has that, but my kids and my whole culture is eaten up with that. Well, just think that for a second. You got a particular area of superpower, and that is yours, and so be you. The Hulk doesn't need to be Iron Man, and vice versa. But although that's a comic book type of thing, it's very real in the working out of. Do you hear what I'm saying? It's very real. Each of you and me have what roughly we could call a superpower, a thing we can do. They tend to break down into 4 generalized, overalized areas. One is executing. The guy we just described is strong here. People with these strengths know how to make things happen, get the details done right consistently. The second one is influencing. There are people with these strengths know how to speak up, take charge, get everyone moving in the same direction. They're natural born leaders. They're pastors, politicians, heads of things who can get a team working really well and inspire people. Third are relation building skills. People with these strengths know how to build long-term consistent relationships. They tend to know and thrive in a consistent relational culture, know how to develop others incrementally, hold a team together over the long haul, like the best bosses, the best supervisors, the best pastors who can sustain things over decades are in this category. And the last thing are people that are sort of the prophets, the strategists, the consultant type people who are people with these strengths can look at something, even the person with who's data driven I described. I was a real person too, but they gladly can take a stack of data. They would be happy with that, believe it or not. There are people like that. But they would love it, come up with a report, help the business, because they can see trends, develop strategy, and the business makes more money and wins in the marketplace because they're strategic, or they're the people who know what to do, kind of the sons of Issachar. They know what to do. All right, these are the 4 of those Gallup strengths finders, and this probably a level of depth into Gallup you've never seen, but I've always found this helpful. Okay, a couple more slides. So when you do into the five strength finders, you'll have these areas of gifting. So achiever, arranger, belief, consistency, deliberative, discipline, focus, responsibility, restorative. Boom, there's that. Influencer, activator, command, communication, maximizer, self-assurance, significant, woo. Relationship, adaptability, developer, connectedness, empathy, harmony, includer, individualization, positivity, relator. People have general ones, but when they're in their main thing, they usually have two or more. It depends, but a lot of times they'll have two or more. And then the last one, strategic, analytical, context, futuristic, ideation, input, intellectual, learner, strategic. Okay. Why am I going through all this? I'm not trying to bore you. I really am not. This is sort of a nerdy thing that I like, but leaders tend to fall in categories of what they're good at. And when a person is good at one of these, I am in no way trying to move them somewhere and make them what they're not. I'm trying to ask them, if God gave you relationship building skills, are you using that 80% of the time to build stronger people and organizations? If you're an influencer, how are you stewarding it? If you have a gift of exhortation, you're a natural born leader. What are you doing with that? And what's the wake of your leadership? And the back of a boat has a wake. Are you leaving a trail of disgruntled, dead bodies and angry, frustrated people? Or are you leaving behind people that feel built up, strengthened, self-assured, they're thriving? You know, whatever it is, I try to really help them. All right, getting towards the end. So in my whole philosophy of mining for gold, when I have a new coachee I'm starting Friday. He's a CEO of a international ministry, goes all over the world. And he came to me and he said, I'm being considered for CEO. He is on the executive team. He's being considered for CEO of the whole organization. He goes, I feel like I'm like, I know my strengths, but I don't feel like I'm maximizing them yet. And I want help. And so what do we do with that? Today's class is right here. It's trying to find alignment. This is what we'll do in sort of the second to the last class, I think it is. We'll really talk about alignment. That people need to rearrange their diary, their schedules, their time. This is where the magic of mining for gold happens, and where the sales happen. So this is the aspect that I'm into today. Okay, a couple more tools to do this. We'll come back to this in a couple classes. You do what's called a time audit, and you evaluate every single hour of your days that you've been spending, and you write them down for a month. And it takes about a month because you forget about this, but when you come away and you actually crunch the numbers and get a number, when I finally did this, I was 40-60 in my sweet spot. It's why I was not bearing a lot of fruit and why I felt pretty miserable. I felt good about 40% of the time, but 60% of the time I was doing things I hated and I wasn't even good at. That review allowed me to start making the changes, gave me clarity. Regular reviews of how they're doing. Like I have people tell them every month, every quarter, evaluate your roles and how you're spending time. And when there's something that's really troubling you, consider, do I delegate this? Do I stop doing it? Do I, figure out a different way that another team member who has a strength in that area can do it? And you have to fight for the 80. You have to fight. You have to proactively go after it. It won't just happen. You have to take responsibility for your time. Could someone else do this better than me? And then as you do that, this is what happened with me. First I hired a secretary to start doing all the administrative. Then I started to look at people on the team around me who had strengths I didn't have. And I went to them like, hey, this is so natural to you. I don't do this well. would you do this for our team? How would you approach this? Started building this team. And also, just the whole organization started to rise because I quit trying to be what I live out of my weakness. As people do this, I find it consistent. The river of their ministry life flows faster. They see more fruit, and I'm not exaggerating. So when they say yes to their strengths, wind, momentum, life, joy. When they say no to things they should be doing out of fear or shame or whatever, and they should be doing those things and they say no, they tend to stay low energy, stuck. Life is horrible because they're saying no and they should say yes. Sometimes they don't know how to say yes, but they say, when they say yes to things that aren't in their sweet spot, or maybe they're because they want to look like so-and-so or please someone, the momentum slows down. They're not saying yes to the right things. But then when they say no, so here's a situation that came up. Right in the peak of when life was really expanding for me, I was national director of coaching. I was traveling to the UK frequently. I was writing a book, Mining for Gold. I was in the process of writing the book. There was a lot of fruit and momentum on my life. And somebody said, Tom, would you be chairman of the board of this organization? I was totally flattered. I'm like, me? Really? That's amazing. And I went to the Lord and I went to my wife, basically. And I said, they've asked me to da. She looked at me like, because she's smarter than me. And she goes, you can't do that. I'm like, yeah, but that's like the biggest honor ever. She's like, you can't do that. I'm like, why? One, it's not where you thrive. And you've got too much on your plate already. You need to say no, Tom. I was like, bummer. But I did it. And I said, thank you. I'm so honored. No. What a great honor, but no. You know what happened? I stayed in the river and the fruit kept going. Am I communicating? I'm just giving you a real life example. When you say no, life continues to flow. So I think I'm done. I'm going to come to this more in three classes. The last one, I'm just going to introduce it today. There are things that you never should do. There are things that you can do. And then we're getting at the things that you must do. And I'll develop that one a little more. We've done enough for today. So I think we've covered it. How do you spend more time? How can your sweet spot serve other people? Where do you feel like you're striving out of self-effort in your leadership? Where do you sense the Holy Spirit getting you into a greater sense of flow? If you were to fully give yourself to this sweet spot thing, what do you hope God would do? For me, it's, I have this vision of a thriving church all over the world. I mean, that sounds lofty, but that's what's in my spirit. Like, if I could bring this message to enough people, maybe people in languages I don't even understand, would be helping people thrive, and the kingdom would come and Jesus would be revealed. I'm connected to that every day in my sweet spot. What is effortless? Last slide. Although sweet spot remains the same, your time and your roles does not. So you're constantly, like, if I was sailing this ship across a big body of water, my compass would be heading one direction, but I'd constantly be watching the wind and my track and how the sails are organized and whatnot, so that I could get where I'm going and sail in that direction. I'm not getting myself there. So this whole thing of sweet spot is something that's not static. All right, I've probably blown your brains. All right, was that too much information?
Oh, it's good. I've made some notes, so it's good.
What?
It's good. I've made some notes.
Okay. So what in that is, you now look at people. I was a deep dive. Mm. What do you come away with around sweet spot? What do you think of sweet spot when you think of your work? Without. Are you in your sweet spot? Carl says he is. Are you in yours, Beth?
I'm not, but I didn't choose my job, so I chose the charity.
Right.
There's enough in it for me to enjoy it for now.
Good. It's a building block. Block.
And it sounds like with the sweet spot stuff that, like you're saying, it's almost like constantly, we need to like constantly adjust our lives.
Correct.
As seasons come, as things change, even though, which is strange because the sweet spot itself doesn't change.
Doesn't change.
But the circumstances and what we give our time to feels like it's like constantly like realigning thing.
Let me give you an example. I mean, don't take this the wrong way, but there'll be a time that your role that you are there, you'll feel something different. You'll feel like it may not be for 2 years or 5 years, but you might come to a place, there's another thing, there's a new thing, or it may be grow there. It may be due to a new place, but expect life to be unfolding and for God to use the current season you're in for what's coming, but it's moving. The roles move, the sweet spot doesn't. So, I mean, that's just life. That's just how it does. Carl, what do you hear about sweet spot? Is that any of this bring you some new information?
It's helpful to hear from your perspective, Tom. I think something that I'm thinking is it would be interesting for me to do a time audit now. I think that's some homework I'm taking away. I need to do that.
Yeah.
And I mean, it will be a good test to see. I'm saying I'm in my sweet spot, so see.
Tends to be brutally honest more than what you feel.
See the numbers.
Yeah,
see the numbers and just take it from there. I find helpful where you plug in with from the strength finder perspective. So what I've done with the guys that I'm journeying with, interesting, some of the people that I've approached are also in their sweet spot. So something must be happening around here. I don't know.
Good.
If it's the coastal weather or what's happening here in George, but
it's the water. I don't know.
Must be.
Good.
But it's interesting the strength focus. So yeah, I need to do some more reading on that.
Okay. So I know that I'm a professional coach and sort of, kind of a guru or nerd. I'm either a nerd or a guru or both. I don't know, but this stuff is crazy interesting to me. I know that may have been deeper than you would go yourself, but this is what I was born to do. People are fascinating to me. Each one's like it's amazing work of art. But even if you don't go to that level, if you start to frame thriving and sweet spot, then today was successful. See that? It's like, and then when you hear a person say, "Oh, I'm so frustrated, I can't do this role," you have a framework to go, well, tell me a little bit about that, Tell me about what parts of this job do you find life-giving? What parts of this do you hate?
I sat with a pastor this morning, Tom, and he was like, I must. And I was like, really? I'm like, really?
Must.
Why is that?
Interesting.
So very interesting conversation. I must. Deep listening. I learned that somewhere. Deep listening. So
I wonder if he talks about that.
Yeah.
But listen, when you do that and you're deep listening and you're listening for the kingdom and you're listening for the Holy Spirit, there are amazing things will happen. You're not doing it. The Father's doing it. You're like this, secret, assistant.
It's like you say, you're a tool, but you working your purpose.
Yeah, and the Spirit will help others find those unique, beautiful spots. And for me, I guess what I tried to say in my book, this doesn't have to be as heavy load on Beth or Carl. It doesn't have to be.
No.
It can be a light load. You hear that?
Yeah.
Isn't that
doesn't
great?
Have to be burdensome. Yeah.
That's good news, man. It's like I can just be this cute Beth girl who's just talking to you and I'm like a superpower, and you're getting amazingly changed, but you're not burning out, Beth. You're like young and you're doing your thing. They're changing and you're not burdened. Man, that's a good deal. You can be you. They're changing. You're not burdened. I think that's fantastic. What were you going to say?
Sorry, Tom. No, I wanted to say, at some point he said to me, "So what should I do? What should I do?" So I said,
What did you say? What did you say?
I said, I Tom Camacho in. So I said,
you put a Tom Camacho move on it.
Just went like that. Now I said to him, "That's a great question. I don't know."
Good for you. That's what you should say.
I said, "I don't know. What does the Lord say?
Amen.
What does He say that you should do?" So,
dude, you're like the Tom Camacho doctor of South Africa, man. You got this stuff.
Yeah, no, for sure.
But listen,
nice job.
You got it. And now you're changing, and your fruit will actually increase. You know why? Because he has to own. What did I say? Start at the beginning.
Yeah,
he has to own his design. He's got to own his issues. He's got to own his path. And when they come up with their own action steps and not mine, it's magical.
Yeah.
Let's summarize. What's your biggest takeaway today, Beth? What's your biggest takeaway?
I love that. I found it really helpful when we were going through this particular person and thinking about what they would and would not be good at, because it just puts some legs on it, you know, rather than just the gifting, wiring stuff. It's like, so if this is their sweet spot, hypothetically, what actually could they be good at? And I almost see the value of, like you're saying, before you meet with somebody, actually like kind of processing that.
Yeah.
You've almost got that to bring to that.
Yeah.
Especially if it's a type of person that's like you maybe haven't worked with or whatever. So I think that was particularly, we just put some legs on it for me, which is great.
Yeah, and it takes a little bit of work, not a ton of work, but I pull their thing out, I get their stuff, and I get a feel. And not so much to tell them anything, but here's this, like Carl, that my questions are more intelligent about, you know what I'm saying? It's like, if I knew that, my questions would be, what about that do you find energizing or not? And I know a little bit, but I don't tell them. I start asking, I'm mined for gold. I go, okay, I get this. Where in that do you feel Jesus, or what's the Spirit invite? So do you see what I'm saying? It's like you do that, what we did in that little diagram, and take that alone, your leadership will go to another level. Carl, what's your big one for today? Time audit.
I think I said enough, Tom, but if I had to summarize, it's just the focusing on the strength, and I agree with Beth. Also, a little preparation, a little planning, and just sitting with the Lord beforehand goes a long way with the focus. So,
good. Well, I hope this class is helpful, guys. I'm giving you the best stuff,
sure.
And what I've found quite fruitful. People all over the world. The beautiful part about this is I don't think it changes depending on your culture. You're still that. You're still who you are. God's made a billion different varieties of people. So let me pray for you. We'll do this 4 more times. I'm really busy right now, but about in 2 weeks, Mary will schedule one more session where we just talk together about you and where you're headed. And we'll wrap up. 1st of June, we'll be done. And you won't have to get up and talk. Oh, I guess you don't get up early like me, but you'll be done with Tom. So, but if I can ever serve you or help you, I love it. So let me pray. Father, thank you for truths that don't change. Thank you for wisdom from Scripture that's real, enduring, and life-giving. Thank you for Beth. Thank you for Carl, for Yapi, for this movement called Mining for Gold that's changing the way we think about leadership. And I just pray that as they work with people, the masterclass will have reframed their thinking on thriving, on developing people. And ultimately, Jesus, you would get more glory around them. Your kingdom would come in more power, more clarity. People would want to know who you are because of the work that you're doing. Thank you. Thank you for this class. Thank you for their lives. And we trust you with the results. In Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you, guys.
Love you guys. Have a good one.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.